agenda item 1, apologies for absence. We've got 10 councillors and 1 clerk here, so I'll take that as a nil. Number 2, disclosure of interest. Do you have any disclosure of interest? Lindsay? Red Lane.
Well, regulations, but not about the allotments.
No. Thank you very much. Item 3, public participation. Just remind members who may ask questions, make representations, only related to items on the agenda in accordance with standing orders for each. And just bear in mind, it might not necessarily be answered by the council at this time. Hopefully later on we should get the answers to your questions. Do you have any thoughts or questions from the public?
First of all, could I just ask for a clarification? On the Parish Council website, it quotes, you can also, if you wish, ask a question, make a point, or raise a subject for discussion at a Parish Council meeting. That's what it says on the website. Now, the title for public questions has changed to public participation. Members of the public may ask questions and make representations relating to items on the agenda in accordance with the standing orders of Form D to F. So first of all, can I have a clarification of what is actually allowed and not allowed from previous Parish Council meetings?
Okay. As I said, as of now, I'll get back to you on that one once I've checked up on it, if you're happy with that. My immediate understanding from the standing orders is we may call upon members of the public when we come tonight and meet it, if we feel they can add something to it. So that's where they can come in there. The first part is because whilst you may ask a question, you can also just make a statement at the bottom. So I think that's why we've changed it to public participation. But I'll answer that fully if you're happy once I get clarification.
So, well, with some of that clarification, so some of the questions are sort of, if I have a question that relates to an agenda item, is it possible to raise my hand and be invited to ask that question? Or am I to do a list now?
You do it now, and then hopefully we will answer that question. Or if we need clarification, we may ask you to speak during that particular item to clarify your question.
Right, thank you. Right, so in item 5, insurance, one of the questions would be, does this include the bridge printer?
Item 5, sorry, which?
Item 5 is insurance, so it's about the insurance cover. So the question is, does that include the bridge printer?
I thought item 5 is fine.
Yeah, sorry, so it says 5.
I see. Oh, yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 No. In item 6, policies and procedures, it's an open door policy. It was, what does this actually mean and how, if that relates to the questions and makes representations, but yeah.
Hopefully that will be
That was an agenda item raised by Richard Evans at the end of the last meeting, that he would like it to be on the agenda, so we haven't considered it yet.
Okay.
It's to be discussed tonight.
The traffic and parking matters in question 9, it's specifically about Pulpit Vale. It's just that it is unlawful to drive on the pavement. Any actions should be for everywhere in the parish, not just on Pulpit Vale.
hopefully that might be covered when we get to that as well.
The surgery, it mentions residents in the title document. It's just that a lot of the residents aren't actually patients within the doctors. So,
Again, that was
it's quite relevant to make sure that it's
So
fully
that should
discussed.
be patient.
But it was an agenda item asked, requested by Councillor Thornton. At that point I didn't realise that it was only a letter that went out to patients, but that became obvious when I had received one myself.
Yeah. So within that letter, that came to patients, there's a lot of untrue statements and inaccurate information, and I was wondering how strongly the PC would be responding to those, because I think it's important that the villagers who are patients and who are not are fully informed as to the status of what's going on.
Okay,
In
hopefully
term-
when we get to item 10, we will see.
Parish representations at meetings. Has the
So
parish council...
just a second. Sorry about that.
It's okay, no?
Yes,
Standing item, the representations at meetings, has the parish council met with the Zero, the developer? And if so, when did that occur? And there's also, why does Councillor Hood not give a report to the parish council on the meetings he has with Northumberland Out when he's apparently there representing on behalf of the parish council? And then, again, it's in relation to how the agendas, the questions and agenda works. I'm not quite sure of the process, but if the public are entitled to put things on the agenda for the next meeting or are asking questions to be answered for the next meeting, then I would like to put forward some items. So the bridge printer purchased on behalf of the parish.
sorry, can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Mr. Scribbler? Is it fair to ask for those agenda items just in writing? Or do you want
I think they need to be in writing because they need to be added to the agenda item.
Okay, if you're happy to put those agenda items in writing to the clerk will add them.
They won't necessarily be added exactly as you write them, Fiona, because it would be added in the same way as this, that it would be an item for discussion by the parish council with appropriate actions.
Okay, so I'll give you the heads up then. It's the bridge printer purchased by the parish council on behalf of the Bridge magazine and the draft agreement. It would be in relation to reclaim access. It would be in relation to the external auditor's correspondence in relation to the challenges made to the parish council accounts for the last 3 years of accounting. There's councillor training following the code of conduct complaints to MCC. There's the clerk's annual PC plan for the year together with the aims and targets that you're going to be set. And finally, there's the ICO report on the bridge printer, which was going to be put up onto the website, which I've had several looks at trying to find and I can't find it.
Thank you. Are there any points? Thank you very much. Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you, Lindsay. Anyone noticed what it was the 2021 for January?
Sorry, so it was number 15, the dates I haven't switched my head into 22 for the last 3 dates. It should obviously be 7th February 2022, 7th of March 2022 and 4th April 2022.
Does anybody have any other items they noticed on those minutes? Or is it
Not a fault so much as the fact that finance pays, there's an item, LSAW, the recreation field. Apparently I received £177. I think it would be prudent if there was additional information that this was not for me personally, it was to cover the purchase of the grass matting.
Yeah, I'll just have a line to say reimbursement of glass matting. They're going to be happy with that at the moment.
So the date correction and the amendment that Councillor Stanton received the money back for the purchase of the matting. Is everybody happy to accept the last minutes as a record account? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Anybody against? No, thank you. Item 5, finances. End of year arrangements, or 5A, end of year arrangements to receive an update. Have you got it?
I haven't been anything down, what we do,
Okay,
I have to talk.
Is this the AGAR?
Yeah, it was just the sort of, all of the end of year stuff, so the accounts, we would also approve the accounts as well.
Yeah. So, if you were, we need to approve all the accounts, we need to fill in the return and the what's it going to be?
Annual governance and accountability
And
return.
the governance and accountability return. And that has to legally be done by the 30th of June, we have no exception to that. It's still with the internal audit moment. Myself, Claire, met with Patrick this morning again. We hope to have that completed by the end of the week. So what we will need to do is come up with a date, unfortunately towards the end of this month, where we'll have to have another meeting with council just to cover the AGAR. And I propose we go over all the finances in that meeting there. Cover it all off in one. Can I just remind everyone, I'll take this opportunity, the JPAG that was sent to you by Claire is a very important document. It's just been rewritten. It's a lot clearer. It's the guidance for filling in how we should meet the requirements of this AGAR. Although it's my signature that goes on the AGAR, it is the responsibility of the whole council that we meet any guidelines in there. It doesn't matter if we don't meet them at the moment. There is no fine to the council. And in actual fact, I know already we're not going to meet some of them. That is not an issue. What we are trying to do is get ourselves compliant to the best of our ability. So the fact that these are being highlighted, we can do something about it. We know where we're going wrong, we can do something about it. The latest AGAR you've been sent, sorry, the latest JPAG you've been sent, is not applicable to this year. However, it will become fully applicable next year. And what I want to do is to mark ourselves against that JPAG anyway, because next year we've got to be compliant to it. So we may as well find out now what we're not compliant to, so that we can work towards it. My aim is in 2 years' time, we should be fully compliant to tick every box yes. So I'm not expecting to this year. We may not even be able to make it next year, but it would be nice if we could, so let's try and work towards that. Certainly in 2 years' time, I think we should be able to tick yes to the box.
I would just add something what Greg said about the early adoption of the most recent version, just because it is more clear, there's a lot more detail, and I think it is better written in quite a few places. So I think it's sensible to use that most updated version anyway. From that point of view.
But in that sense, it's important that every council here does take the time to read that, understand it as best they can, so that when we come to our meeting later in the month to discuss the AGAR and where we're not compliant, everybody's able to contribute to it and say whether they think we are or they're not compliant.
I will send it round again with the, given the discussions that we've had with Patrick, I've made a few minor changes. We've already had draft accounts, which were our provisional ones. They're going to change slightly, but not substantively, but it's a few little, it's to do with where the cemetery money goes in and out. So there's a few changes coming through. So I will now, that we've got to the bottom of that with Patrick, send out fresh set of accounts, which will be the ones that we approved at the meeting. And I will send the JPAG guidance again, so that you've all got it together in one place. Okay.
So do we want to try and set a date now?
I haven't got the dates from Pat. What I'll do is I'll sort that tomorrow, and I'll get some dates from Paul when the room's available, and then I can send them around and we'll go for the majority.
Okay.
I used to meet evenings is probably best for.
So probably about 1915 weeks again, if that suits everybody rather than the daytime one. So expect that. Check the emails, and we'll look at setting a new date. So there's no actual resolution to it. So that's what's going to happen at the end of the year. They'll be discussed later in the month. Does anyone have any questions on that? B, to receive a financial statement and budget monitoring document, pages 7 to 10. Your agenda. Can I just ask a couple of questions of myself? So on the income, we've got some against Davidson's on this. Why do we get the money coming in from the?
Because we bill on the one sort of costs.
Insurance, is that a refund? What is the money in for insurance? Is that a claim?
That again is us recharging on more installment and person for the War Memorial Day for Solace.
Thank you, that's right, somewhere. And the Recreation Lane maintenance contribution, are we still getting contributions from that? Or is that again Leeds, not the Thurston, sorry, West Thurston?
Recreation Lane?
Yes, the Recreation Lane maintenance contribution.
That depends what we do with various access issues.
Okay.
There's properties on the lane that we would potentially be putting something in writing, and then they would be the ones that potentially would pay a contribution, but that hasn't been signed yet, so that's estimated.
Okay. All right.
There's potential, I suppose.
Yeah. On the payment side, sorry, does anybody else have anything on the income they'd like to ask? Question? On the payment side, we've got the cemetery for cash contribution. Just my own benefit. Why the 1350 this year, not 1403 as we did last year?
Because the cemetery decided it didn't need as much money from each of the councils.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
Sorry, just because the cemetery, so what the cemetery does is it's effectively a balancing exercise. They look at what they think the expenditure is going to be in any given year. Now, obviously, a lot of it depends on the number of deaths, but obviously, the more burials there are, the expenditure goes up, but the income goes up as well. So they've just put it down because there's been a few years where we've run at a gain, effectively. So there was a bit more in the pot, so they decided they didn't need as high an amount this year.
And is it shared equally or on a per capita
It's
basis?
a per capita based on the electoral numbers.
Okay.
It's weighted towards Felton and Newton on the Moratorium. They pay more first and is the smallest contribution.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything on the expenditures before we look at the... yes?
The chartered surveyor's costs towards the bottom.
I was coming on to that, that was reserved, so I was just going
Okay.
to sorry. Expenses, does anybody have anything else on expenses? Thank you. Okay, Richard, I'll let you can ask that one, I was going to ask you can ask it. On the...
I don't think I've seen any information about what 3,500 was spent on.
It hasn't been spent yet, that's in the budget. We do have an invoice, but we've asked for a breakdown of the invoice, so as soon as I get
I was
that.
just going to check, this is in relation to the charter survey we had in relation to the surgery.
Yeah.
So,
In relation
to the surgery, before we took on the new solicitor, we had a charter surveyor instead. We went from the charter surveyor to the solicitor because we weren't getting what we wanted. But we've still got to pay the charter surveyor for the work he's done already. It's not that amount, that was how much we budgeted.
Yeah.
That's in the reserve budget. He has sent it all, but we're querying.
We've asked for a breakdown.
We've asked for a breakdown.
So we'll see that at some stage.
Yeah, as soon as I get it.
Well, he doesn't get the money if he doesn't.
Well, I know, so
It's
it's
still.
exactly.
Anybody else, any other points on that? On to the cemetery one. I think last year already what the cherry tree was, but for the information, because I wasn't aware, there's one for reserved for the cemetery cherry tree. Apparently there was...
Well, Tony can tell you probably better than me. The cherry tree, can you just explain what the cherry tree issue was?
That was a problem with the cherry tree, supposed to be causing problems with the wall, with one of the residents, of the owners of the house in Bedlow Road. But we checked it, and it was checked, and we had some glass put on the wall, and the glass never cracked. So really, that's something we could probably, when we put something in the next year, we probably might dispose of it.
Okay.
So it probably doesn't need to be held in there in case we needed to do anything, but actually that
Yeah.
seems to
So just a fund we put in place for contingency.
Okay. And for my own information, can I ask what the Green Willis Fund is for?
What?
The Green Willis Fund.
That is a fund to maintain some graves in the village, in the cemetery.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions on that? Do we have to approve those?
No, but we're going to, because the extension changed the tree. So
Yeah. That payment for approval, that just 5C, but 5C of insurance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I sent you out the insurance cover documents. Really, I mean, so what I've done is I have paid the insurance so that because the cover is effective from the 1st of June, so the payment has been processed and we've got the confirmation that the insurance is effective. If we need to make any changes to it, they're happy to do that. we would just send in the changes that we wanted to make, and they would send us an amended premium. But my assumption was that if you know, really, it would only increase, I think, if we were putting the cover up. I don't think we would go down, so that's why I felt comfortable paying the premium. Yeah, it's just, I mean, obviously the level of cover, we did look at last year when we did, I think we looked at it last year when we looked at the accounts, because that's when we increased the cover for the War Memorial, and the Datons on this went up quite dramatically last year, because Newton on the Moor and Swan and had evaluation done. And that's when we also added on to the waste bins and things that were previously not included. So, I mean, I don't know whether this is like a longer term exercise, a general revaluation and assessment of property, or whether it's something we, I mean...
I think it would be, it'd probably come down to something that our new property management group will take on just to do an assessment of the valuation.
Yeah.
So
I think for now it's probably...
Makes sense for our property management to the other else.
I think it's probably fine for now, but yeah, good to have it higher, quite high up on the agenda for the year generally.
Yes.
So kind of get that.
So what we need to do is make sure, because that comes up in obviously May, June time now.
Yeah. So 1st of June, it was 1st of June to 1st of June.
So certainly February, March time, we need to make sure we're looking at evaluation to be brought up as an
But we
agenda
can do it at
item.
any point in the year, because we can always increase cover halfway through, they just send us a balance out.
But yes, I appreciate that, but if we haven't done it in the year, we need to make sure that by February, March, we're covering that in the agenda item to make sure we're
Ahead.
ready for the next year. So that's just to review it. And the final one on 965D to authorise the payments, which you should have in file in page 11. So the next thing, I take that's from a reading this time?
No, it isn't, because I've chased them about it. I followed it up with them because I rang them and I said that I hadn't had anything back. So I spoke to them and they said, please send us an email with photos of the meeting we did. Didn't hear anything, so I rang them and said, I haven't heard anything, can you confirm we received the email? Oh, we're running behind on emails. So in the meantime, there's again, so it's just going to increase the credit that we have, and just, you know, it's irritating. But I'll chase them again, but yeah.
You may well find we've got a lot of money
Yes.
in hand with them. As a normal householder, I expect that we should ask for a refund of that credit.
Yeah, well that's what they did last time, I think we got like that, they just did a refund.
Could we keep an eye on when the contract ends?
Yeah.
And get
Well, just about to ask that, do we have the ability, as we do as a householder, to go into comparison, compare?
I don't know if it's on any special,
are we on the term contract?
we're on a term contract.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think they were quite competitive when we went on to it, which is why we went on to the term contract with them in the first place.
But as often happens on these things, they're competitive for the first year. Or
But it's been the same rate, it hasn't changed over the term.
So, does anybody have any issues or any questions on the payments for approval? The maintenance staff, £600, I think we've got timesheets for all that. For the ground maintenance. Can I see those at some time? Just thank you. So with that in mind, I'd like to put a resolution that we approve the payments, or the payments are for approval are agreed. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Item 6, policy procedure 6A, to review the timing for the publication of the agenda and to agree any changes. Myself propose the agenda should be published 1 week in advance of the meeting. There was myself, Richard and Anne were at one of the NALC courses they run for new councillors, and Stephen Rickett there. And he was sort of saying that we should ideally have it out a week before rather than minimum 3 days before. I think a big advantage to that is we're all busy, or most of us are quite busy, and if we get the agenda with 3 days' notice, we may not have it as much time as we'd ideally like to research the items. So if we have it a week before, we should have more than enough time, in the evenings, etc., if you're busy working, to devote to doing some research that we're more prepared at the meetings. That's my view. Does anybody have
Can I just
any?
clarify,
Sorry,
when
yes.
you say 1 week,
So, well, two.
Well, Chair,
at the moment it's 6 days because it's the Tuesday, so you're talking about the previous Friday.
Friday, yes,
That's
so we've got
week.
the whole of that middle week, so we can't count a day, so all I want is, yes, please.
Yeah, so at the moment it's the Tuesday, but you're saying you'd have the extra days at the weekend and the Monday.
Yes,
Yeah.
so if the meeting's on the Monday, go back to the following, and then go back to the Friday before, so it gives us a whole working week, 5 days, plus the 2 weekends, so it's actually 9 days we've had.
the only trouble, Chair, is if they was to get something important in, and it's not on the agenda, and we've got to discuss it, and say the county council, someone needs an answer within a fortnight, how do you cover it?
How do you cover that if it comes in the day after the agenda's run out? We've got to draw a line somewhere.
Well, that's why we've always had the 3 years.
Because ours is quite a generous 3 days because it's the exam on a Monday, you get that extra weekend, because if you meet with a Friday night.
Just a question, because I don't know the answer myself. We publish it a week before to give everybody time, but if we do have something like that comes out, can we publish an amendment or an amendment to it, as long as we've got the 3 days clear still?
In theory, yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go then, that's everything. Happy with that then, Tony? So we can still put an amendment in, so we've got something for the public available.
Well, that's amendment. No, what I'm saying is,
Yes.
it's just Claire gets something in
Yeah.
and teaches an answer.
She can put another agenda out,
Yes.
as long as she's still got the 3 clear days.
Or supplement the
From,
agenda.
from Stephen Ricketson again, I might take Kurt Krauser, but Stephen Ricketts seemed to imply that you could count Saturday and Sunday if we really wanted to.
You can count Saturday if you really want to, but not Sunday.
Okay, then.
And I don't know if you can for full meetings or if that's only for.
He said you could, but again, I don't, that's sort of, it's not what he was saying, that's what he said this week, but, yes. So,
Can I?
yes, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
It's working day.
Could
I know
I?
that's,
Could I say that that we have that we don't make it an absolute hard and fast
No,
rule,
but-
but we do it for most meetings, but then if we needed to do one at short notice.
my resolution then, if nobody's got it, is the agenda and calling notice will, whenever possible, be published 1 week in advance. The minimum of 3 days will still be acceptable for short notice, i.e. extraordinary meetings. So that is the proposal I'd like to put forward.
When you see 1 week in advance, Chair, you've got to be careful with your wording.
1 working week, so five working days.
But that's what you've got to clarify, not week. You've got to clarify working days.
Five clear working days.
Five
then.
clear working days.
Not including weekends, just to make it clear. So the resolution will be the agenda and calling notice will, whenever possible, be published 5 working days, not including weekends,
Yeah, working days.
in advance. The minimum of 3 working days will still be acceptable for short notice, i.e. extraordinary meetings. So you have a point?
Yes, I thought the exception was if there was, as Tony said, a
Yes.
demand from the county council.
I said i.e. extraordinary meetings, or so we could, I can't give every example, but our aim is to go for 5 clear working days, but by exception, we'll still allow the 3 working days.
For additions to the agenda or
For additions to the agenda or short notice
the
meetings.
agency meeting. Okay.
So that's the resolution before the council. If anyone to discuss it, we'll have to go to the vote. Okay, all those in favour? Any against? No? Thank you. Oh, you're against?
No. I thought we'd done that. I have a question that's relevant,
Yes.
which is, I'm not sure what our regulations say at the moment, but there's a call for items for the next agenda at the end of the meeting. Is there a deadline by which we need to notify you about items for the agenda? Is it the end of the meeting we just finished?
No,
Or-
yeah, there is, but it needs to be amended in light of the agenda going out earlier. What's it say at the moment?
Because, you know, sometimes you need to go away and mull
Yeah.
over what's gone on.
Yes, yes.
And then say, well, we should really be discussing X, Y, or Z.
So,
Okay.
at the moment we've said at least, yeah, no, that's still fine, I think, actually, because at the moment it says you would submit a motion at least 4 clear days before the meeting, because that's
Okay.
allowing for those 3 days. So I think,
So the Thursday night before Claire puts it out on
but
Friday.
Or even a week before.
but no, because it could be closer, because it could be a supplemental item to the agenda if it was urgent enough, or you could discuss with the council and say, well, I'll put it on the following one.
But ideally, then email to Claire by that Thursday before the Friday.
A week and a bit.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Item B, consider the clerk's attendance at committee meetings. Myself and Lindsay have discussed this, and I had after our council course, I had a long chat with Stephen Ricketts the very next day on the phone. I was on the phone to him for a couple of hours. But I think you'll all agree that our clerk is working pretty hard at the moment. There's a lot for her to do. And because of that, maybe we're not getting all the things through when we'd like. But especially with the surgery building at the moment and how we're going towards that, I think hopefully we're starting to come towards a conclusion. And I can only see work maybe getting a bit tighter on that, deadlines, etc. So, let's just read what's going. I spoke to Steve Ricketts about it. He also pointed out that we as a council have an obligation to manage our personnel, manage them, and make sure that they have got plenty of time to do their own things as well as council stuff. My proposal is that for the next 6 months, and the idea is we'll review it at 6 months, and actually I plan to review it every 6 months. So for the next 6 months, is that the parish clerk will only attend full parish council meetings in the role of a clerk. So she won't attend committee meetings, i.e. Repfield committee meetings, cemetery committee meetings. Can I just finish the bit and then I'll come to you, that's okay?
I object, Chair.
Okay.
Sorry, the clerk is required at assembly meetings. Assembly is a full committee of 3 councils.
I was saying for the recreation.
Well, that's full councils. Okay. I'll come back to that one, we'll leave that one off the agenda. I'll take your word for it at the moment, and I'll go and look at that one again, and come back to you on that one. I need to look at that.
Chair.
Yes? Sorry, yes.
I was reading sort of information after Stephen Ricketts' talk, and I'm sure it said somewhere that any committee of a council, whether it's a subgroup or anything, that has minutes that need to be published publicly, so any of our committees rather than working groups, they expect the clerk to be there to take those minutes.
That's expect, but again, I'm just talking to Stephen, it doesn't have to be.
Right.
So they expect them. but
Well,
it doesn't have to
somebody would have to take the minutes,
be.
Chair.
Yes, that can be any council member again talking to Stephen. Any council member can take minutes, and it wouldn't be full minutes as the way Claire. The minimum acceptable, talking to Stephen, is to produce a list of resolutions that came out of that meeting. So all we have to produce is at that meeting, if I take the name, a resolution was passed to put a timer on the mugger lights, so we're not wasting electricity. So a resolution was passed to put a timer on the mugger lights. And that's all that needs to be recorded.
I can understand what you just said there, but if there's quite a few on a committee, and we do need minutes, and I can take minutes.
No.
And I don't know if anybody else can, but I know you just said like a short, but I think it's, if the way Claire does minutes, everybody can see them, and then she gives a better
The
rundown.
problem we've got is at the moment, she has a very high workload and limited hours to do this. And we're expecting, I think, too much of our clerk at the moment. There's too much for her to do in the hours she's got.
What kind of offer hours up?
She might not have the time to put the hours. We can ask her to put the
I
hours
was going to
up.
say, I think we should ask.
We can ask her, but if she hasn't got the time, through childcare or whatever, then we are stuck. So this was a possible solution to that.
Yeah, sometimes,
Because what I also want to do is I want councillors to take on more of the responsibility themselves. Because at the moment, every meeting I've seen, we go, Claire, will you write a letter such and such? Claire, will you write a letter such and such? It doesn't have to be Claire. One of us as a councillor can do that. Claire can get 3 quotes. Claire only has to, as the responsible financial officer, only has to collect those 3 quotes. There's nothing to stop a council member being requested to go to approach companies and identify 3 or 4 companies. So, as an example, say you need some wood chippings for the children's play park. So at your committee meeting, you discuss we need new wood chippings. So you discuss that and you say, right, Councillor Souter, just using you as an example, Councillor Souter, can you look on the internet and find us 3 or 4 companies that produce wood chippings? So he does that. At the next meeting, he says, I've come up with these 4 companies. You can then, as a resolution, ask the clerk to get quotes from those 4 companies. And that's all she has to do then. She's not Googling the companies, which she's doing at the moment. Waiting for time. Yes, it does. But, you know, it doesn't have to be Lindsay all the time. This is what I'm getting at. So at the moment, when I've seen it, it's the clerk, can you go and get us 3 quotes? And that's all the brief is. So then she has to Google all these companies. She doesn't know what she wants. She has to find all the information. That's just taking up valuable time. Sorry, I've just come to Richard first.
I think unless there's a statutory requirement for the clerk to attend committees, we should be able to both chair and minute. And the minutes, just to be merciful to the other councillors, should be very brief.
well, I'm chair and I cannot do it. You shouldn't presume people can do
No, it's
things
not
like that.
No, I'm not saying you should do it, but among the group on
You just said chair should do the minutes, didn't you? Did you not just
No.
say chair?
No, I said somebody should be able to chair and somebody should be able to do minutes. So 2 different things. Yeah.
Would it not be it's the chair's responsibility for whatever group it is to delegate that kind of work?
Sorry, say that again, please.
Whoever's chairing,
Yes.
whatever group it is, whatever committee I should say, because working groups does not come into it.
Yeah.
But the chairs of the various committees, if there's information needed, should it not be them that are guiding and saying, right, this is the information we want, who's going out for it?
Okay, and what we need to do
But
then,
still not Claire there
Yeah.
doing the minutes.
what we need to do is make sure that
So
we're
make
not
sure the
asking-
chairs have got a responsibility to say, right,
yes,
some
and not just pass it on
to
to.
get that
We
information.
have
Yeah.
done that as well, and some
Yeah.
of them just won't bother.
But then it won't get done, so this is the thing, like, then if it's important to the committee, it will get done.
Yeah.
And if it's not
Yeah.
important to the committee,
Yeah,
I've asked people to do things and it hasn't been done.
it'll be a case of volunteers, you and you.
Well,
Standing in line.
I'd like to address a question to the clerk.
Yeah.
Claire, what would help you work more efficiently? I think, is it more hours or more help from us, or what would it be that you would have in an ideal situation? I think the minutes actually don't take me very long. I just said that to Greg. The minutes don't take me very long, and I am happy to attend meetings. I think what you lot are suggesting about delegating and just using the committees more effectively to do some actions, because otherwise, you know, things, unless you have me, they just get bumped down the list because I've got the accounts to do or I've got something else to do. So I think that would be, yeah, if we can use the committees effectively.
because you've got all the information, the background, of what's going on as well,
Yeah.
where some of them haven't. There's that's another thing to look at.
You've got lots of members with vast experience on the council here. I mean, I've only been on 4 to 5 months now. I can just as well Google something as Claire can. I can ask Claire for who would I need to contact if that's what you want, you know, and all she has to do is give you the information if she's got it. You know, if it's who do I write this letter to?
But also it's things, I think if we're just a bit more, and it's, you know, I'm as guilty of it as anybody, I think if we're a bit more definite about what we want, because I do find sometimes we get information and then we'll come back and we haven't really taken the decision and there's more questions. And how many times have we revisited the same thing at the rec field, for example, because
Yeah.
we pass, I I think we need to put in, it's doing preparation work before we go out to quotes, perhaps, because knowing exactly what we're asking, so that people have had a chance to say, oh, we need to, I know sometimes it's unavoidable, you're going to get a quote back and you're going to need to clarify things, but I think if we could be more focused on what we're seeking, so that we can actually.
So maybe we'll have a meeting and there's questions asked and we'll answer, and then after the meeting, we change our mind.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
That's what we need to be, and that's
And that's what we need to,
yeah.
to sort of clamp down on. So if we're not, like I said, I'll go away and look at the legal requirements for the clerk to attend those meetings. But as she said, the minutes don't take her long, she's had to do the minutes. But what I want to push out and stress to any chairs of committees or standing agendas is please use your councillors. They're the ones that volunteer to do this. The clerk is here purely to do one job, to take the minutes, to do the responsive finance guys, not to do all that, not paying them to do all our knick-knack for us. So to take on more responsibility ourselves and try and just use her in a
Mr. Chair,
very clever. Yes, sorry, Mike.
will you ask the clerk that when something new, a new job comes up, you ask them not to say, I'll do it.
I'll sit on my hands and say, you nag me.
Yes, well, this is
Yeah,
just
that's what I'm saying, I think that's what we've got into that habit, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
we've got into the habit of the clerk will say it and we've just accepted it and let's get on with it. So,
Do you think we should go away and mull this over and get all the information and then come back for the next
yeah,
meeting?
I won't pass a resolution now because I need to find out where I stand legally, so yes. But I will put a plea out to all committees when it stands to try and take on, do the job that we're volunteered to do. Okay, so I won't push on that one, I'll leave that, but I will sort of stress that we can do more ourselves. Item C, to consider an open door policy with residents. Let's just put that down. Richard, was this yourself that brought this up?
It was.
Was this, when you say open door, are you talking about surgeries, open surgeries, or...
I think the principle I think we should pursue is to give people in Felton the opportunity to come and ask questions, to suggest ideas, to make observations or make red minutes and so on. But to have an interchange. Now, you could sit down and go on for hours and hours and hours, and you could have people who make a nuisance of themselves, but basically to set a time of an hour and a half, maybe once a month, and see how it goes, but to give people the opportunity of talking to, not necessarily the whole council. I mean, I think it would probably just need 2 or 3 of us to volunteer and do it on the rota so it doesn't become too much of a burden. But I think people are really interested. You've only got to go to the Running Fox to buy some croissant, 3 people ask you, what's the council doing and what's happening about this, that and the other. And they're things that we can talk about and we can get their views and help to fill that in.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
have we got this here now tonight? Why don't people come and say
That
that to us at this meeting tonight?
That was going to be my point.
Sorry?
That was going to be my point. If we were interested, I think we'd have more people
Well, I think
in our audience.
the problem is that it's an audience and it's not participation. And certainly when I've watched council meetings over the last 1.5 to 2 years, the public are allowed to engage right at the beginning and not afterwards. So there's no exchange of views, there's just, you can sit here and watch what's happening.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, it was similar. If there was a member of the public wanted to say something,
Yes.
if it's not on the agenda, you may not wish to talk about it at the time. And actually, it could be quite a simple problem that they need sorting out there and then. And, the public questions, unless there's a public discussion happens, then it's not going to happen.
Mr. Chairman, you can have the opportunity to speak all the way through the meeting, provided the chairman gives you permission to speak at a certain time. Is that correct?
I think yes, it is.
Yes.
My view, I mean, if I have put this resolution, if people want to give up their time, we give them up. I happily put my email contact on the website, so people can freely email me with any questions. I've happily put my picture on the website so people can recognise me and stop me in the street. I have no objections to that. That to me is making myself open. I've talked to as many people as I can in the street. I think I like what you're saying, but I think it's going to be difficult to get the time. It's going to be difficult to book somewhere to do it. We already have difficulty getting the hall for these meetings, but I'm happy to throw it open if people want to volunteer and do something like that. Does anybody else have any other suggestions how we can improve it? I think we can do it yesterday.
I think we just need to make the routes of communication clear to people and advertise that. And I think using the Facebook idea was a good idea and make it clear how they should be communicating things. I don't think anyone in the right mind is going to want to sit through us all doing this just to come and ask a couple of questions and things. The surgery idea is a really lovely idea, but I think as things stand at the moment with how busy this committee is, I just don't think it's going to be feasible. So I think it is just clarifying those routes of communication that are available to people at the moment.
I agree, and I've got possible answers to that. If we'll just leave that one for the moment, then, because it will maybe tie it up with the rest. The introduction of a social media page. I have some grave concerns about this. Who will run the page? Because the clerk is already busy enough, she already runs one website, so just think about who will run the page. The Brendan clerk. Who approves posts to the page? Does it have to be the full council, or if it's just one council member putting posts on, is there a disclaimer to say it represents just their view, because they're not necessarily speaking for the whole council if it's not being approved? Who maintains recurrency if we're putting any information on there that's already on our website, with documents like JPEGs, access to those? Who maintains displaying the correct latest version of it? In the RF we've had issues where we've run several websites and one may have a later version of something else, so we cut that down to try and limit the possibility that we've got incorrect or out-of-date information on there. You run a risk of inappropriate comments. We've already seen on the Felton First Matter that you put something on there, you'll get a lot of troll or people just trying to get a bite. If we put our own page on there, you're just going to turn off comments for everything, so it's what's the point? My point is we've already got a website with all this information on. What I suggest is that we put an article in the Bridge. Every time the Bridge is produced, we put an article on what we've done or what we're doing. And that article is written by one of us every time it's produced. It's bi-monthly, I believe. There's 10 of us, that would only come around every 20 months. So once every 20 months, you have to write an article for the Bridge. And I would happily start that off and do the first article if you would think that's a way of going ahead. And we can get that information out to the public that way. And we can have a standard thing to contact your members, see the website, with a link to the website. Like I say, I have concerns. So does anybody else have anything for the Facebook page or like to say increase?
Well, I think it was John had asked for it on the agenda, so I don't think
I think my point was, social media is by no means a new thing now, and taking what the Northumberland County Council do, it could be a one-way information stream. You could turn off comments and say that this Tuesday there's a coffee moment to raise money for this charity. This weekend the Parish Council will organise a letter pick, or it's just like information. Because I'm aware that it's on the Parish's website, but put it on someone's phone, or put it on a device, or put it on Allotment First and Matters, just allowing the rest of Felton to see that we are actually busy doing stuff. So I think it would stop criticism of, I've mentioned this to the councillors months ago and nothing's happened. Or if somebody maybe doesn't have the ability to get here at 7:15 on a monthly basis, then they can still find out what's going on. And certainly nothing with the county council to say what good things have happened in the county, what bad things have happened, what we'd like to improve, what would people's view be on this, and then obviously it is two-sided. But you know, I don't think it would have to be a burden. I just think it would be an alternative way of getting out what we're doing.
We have quite an elderly population here. There are lots that I do know that aren't on Facebook even, or don't know if you use these ones where everybody does get a copy of the Bridge magazine. So that's what my thought behind that. So that includes everybody.
You could put that article on the website, it's on the Facebook thing as well, if you did want to go down both routes.
The point is, Chair, on this, it's a valid argument, but County Council have plenty full-time staff to provide this information onto the media. We do not. You just talked about Claire having a notice of it. So is the responsibility going to come to you?
No, that's what I said. I'm too busy, Claire's too busy, so if John wants to take the time and do it, and create a page, but as soon as 4 years' time, if he doesn't stand, it will probably die.
It's better using the bridge, I personally
I mean,
think.
you could have, the county councillors, lots of them have their own, have a second Facebook profile in their councillor, you know, where it says councillor, blah, blah. You know, get Glenn Sanderson's a prime example, he's got his own private one, he's got a councillor public profile as well, and he comments on things. So another option would be,
If you want to have
set your own councillor one, and you comment, and if it's something where you feel like you don't know what the official position is, you do the disclaimer thing, you say, I'm answering as an individual, I'll bring it to the council, whatever, and engage with people if you want to, because that would be a
I
sort of...
think you have to make that clear, that is your page, and not necessarily the view of the full council.
But not even have a page, just have a second, have a second profile where you log in as the council, because I think you can do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the county councillors seem to do, well, some other better county councillors seem to do. So, is there an issue with us using that one first?
We
and
go
then
for
back
the
to
bridge
this?
article and we research
Yes, so,
secure media.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
answering Janet's question, I am not on Felton.
Thursday matters.
If we were to use the bridge as well though, but is there an issue with us just using that without us setting up a separate Facebook account and things and just putting a comments off announcement on that page when we do want to put something up?
As long as you never ask me to do it.
I think Marian's done that in the past, probably, I think the things like that. Yeah. And we can ask for the comments, we can turn the comments off on it and it can just be an announcement on that Facebook track and we could trial it that way as well as putting it in the bridge. Would that be a good way to start the ball rolling with it?
But we need to know who's going to do that. If you and John between you have to take that on, because like I said, I'm not having the clerk village, he's busy enough with the other websites.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly busy enough.
I mean, you can just link from the website often, I guess, if it's things that are on there.
So proposal, if we have it, that we start putting an article in the bridge, we submit an article to the bridge, written by a different councillor every month.
Chair, the bridge only comes out every other month.
I know, written by the council, but it's written by a different councillor every time, every other month.
Edition, yeah.
So therefore, one councillor only does it every 20 months. I would suggest that before you submit it, it comes to myself and the deputy chair. So it comes to the chair and the deputy chair, just have a quick look to make sure we're not giving anything confidential away, and then get submitted to the bridge. So and we can also research the secure media passage or a social media passage. So the proposal that we start putting an article in the bridge. I'll put that as a resolution. Does anyone want to discuss that or have to go to a vote? So all those in favour of the committee put an article in the bridge on a violent...
I'm abstaining because
That's
I
fine.
don't feel sufficient knowledge.
Okay. Any against? All those against?
Well, I'll tell
sorry.
you why I'm against, because I'm not into the things that you want.
That's all right.
That's why. I don't disagree, I'm not into the right community.
That's, I think it would come, I think the councillors, if there's councillors who feel less confident, they can always bloody up, they can get someone else to help them write it, it doesn't have to be something to be worried about.
I'm not expecting the best condition, but I'm Although I'm good at looking at other people's, but I'm not very good at looking at myself.
I personally, as a chair, have an aversion to Facebook anyway, because I think everyone I've read or what I'm told what's on there, it absolutely disgusts me.
But I think a good way of getting our message
People's
across would be
attitudes.
through the bridge. So
That's,
we'll start with an article on the bridge. I'll do the first one then. So it may not be the very next bridge, because I don't know when the deadline is.
it's the 10th of the month, and is it going to be, the 10th is in a few days, or the 10th is in the following month?
10th of in the next few years.
Okay, so it won't be the next article. Don't worry.
No, it'll be 10th of July. 10th of July.
Right, so hopefully I'll get it, that's the deadline, I'll get it produced for them. So I'll try and come up with an article for the next bridge, and then I'll come up with a rotary and have it, we'll push it round, and everybody can have a go at writing an article. Doesn't have to go long. It can even be about what you've done as your contribution.
Would it not be even a good idea to introduce all your new, the new faces of the parish council and
Yeah.
who you all are and what our different roles are on committees and things like that?
Yep.
To get the message out. I know it's on the website, but
Yeah.
by and large,
So it's
not
not
many
like,
people do look at that, whereas in an introduction to the whole council, I think person have done it in the past, we be a councillor.
like a little tiny little mini profile, basically.
So we'll try and do some, that's how we'll start the first one off. That's my plan. Okay?
Ask you to drop them off. Yeah, can you remind me to open it again though, because I got one passing.
Do you want to talk about how we resolving
Thank you.
the two, are they going to start on Facebook as well?
Are you two happy to do all the 3 days?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm between them, so probably three.
So
The three of you then.
So the resolution for the 3 new members to submit posts onto.
Working group?
Yes. So we could make a Facebook working group between them.
Well, if you want to what we could do, you have a think about how it might work, and then send me suggestions around by email, and we can either discuss it again in July, or we can get, if everybody's sort of happy with it, we get going, couldn't we?
Yes. It's just leaves really, because we've got that last one, that title really, it still doesn't really. The open door policy, I think we're doing enough, and I think with what we're doing with this, we'll see how it goes with the bridge article and the Facebook articles that we're doing now, whether we still feel the need to hold a surgery. So happy we'll delay that one for a couple of meetings and review it, bring it up again, see how it goes.
Yeah. And it might tie in as well, to be honest, with the arrangements for the annual parish meeting, because that's effectively your first one, isn't it?
Yes.
If you don't get people coming through the door for that, then you treat part of that's a surgery. You say, well, we'll have an informal part to start with, where you can just mingle and chat, and then we'll have a meeting.
Yeah, so that brings on to the annual parish meeting, which was supposed to be held last month.
Yeah.
I think the thought was to wait until after the 21st of June to see what the restrictions are.
Yeah.
So I might potentially still have one. It's just when, bearing in mind we're going to have another council meeting at the end of the
I
week.
think, yeah, and I think, because at the moment, the hall is limited to, I'll be wrong, I think it's a maximum of 20 in this, 25 of it in this bit.
It depends how it's
Depends how it's laid out, so if you have people sitting down, you couldn't really have people standing and moving around, I guess, so have to be seated. I think they've said it's laid out in theatre style at something like 25 to 30, you have to lay people out. So it depends how we're already 11 people.
Yes,
So it's not a huge, until the 21st of June, it's not a huge number.
that we can have in. So we need to wait to see what the restrictions are. I'm happy, so I'm just going to Richard first, and then
Well, if we want to encourage people to come along, we could think about something slightly crazy, like having a marquee or a gazebo on the recreation field, and somebody selling bacon rolls and cups of coffee or something like that.
I think that's a good idea, because
Yeah.
again, you could have the sides up, you could have it ventilated, so you'd be an outdoor
That's
meeting
right.
automatically rather than an indoor one.
yes.
And it might be cheaper.
Was it the cake or something?
So,
I don't really want to be
Ms.
reported
Fraser, you want to?
I was just going to say, if it's an informal meeting, then if you don't, the annual parish meeting, it doesn't need to have the councillors here, it just needs a representation of the councillors, so it wouldn't have to be 11.
Right,
Probably.
yes.
But it was, yeah, but if people want, this is the difficult thing then, isn't it? Because if people are wanting to say they're available,
Yes. Well, I agree what you're saying. We'll have this parish meeting, but you don't. It's not compulsory that everybody turns up to that one. It'd be nice if we all did to show full representation, but it's not compulsory.
And it would be nice if you didn't get 3 people turning up, but you've got 30 or 40 or whatever. So I think some sort of incentive and encouragement for people to come along would be good.
Does anybody feel that they have some good contacts or will be able to look at marquees or something for?
Not just borrow the fair market.
As it.
yeah, I mean,
That
that
is
was
on the rec field already in the.
that would be the obvious suggestion to approach them to say, could we borrow?
Are you on the fair committee as well? Could you ask the fair committee if we could use?
It definitely needs airing because there won't be a better.
It absolutely will be, because I'm not used to either, so.
If we can use their marquee, and if they really have to help
Which
us.
size would you like?
There's a party tent.
Chair, remember, the marquee is not the fairs. That's higher in. All they've got, fairs got is gazebos, isn't
So
it?
it's part of
They've got
the
the
party
party
tent.
What's from different one?
We've got 2 party tents, as I call them.
They're talking about a marquee here.
Well,
Oh, I know, but even a little one.
But you could have there's 2 medium-sized ones, isn't there? Like what I call them the party tents. I don't know if that's their official name.
But they are part
Is that what I thought? There we go. That's why I call them that then. There's the 2 party tents, but you could have both of them if you thought.
You only need one.
And then they're harder to put up those
And then
type of
put up.
gazebos. You're better to have a 6x3 gazebo and have 2 of those.
Or 4 of those.
Four
Well,
of
I've
those.
got 4 of those big ones, but we've got 4 of those.
4 little ones there.
I could see those.
If you could let me know if we could use those, and we'll investigate that. I still think we're going to have to wait until after the 21st, because that may be put back, and I think we'll probably have to do this in July, because we'll have a definite answer by, we're already holding another meeting at the end of June anyway, so sometime in July is when we're going to arrange. And if we've heard something by the extraordinary meeting, as well as discussing the finances, we can discuss this. And if not, the meeting in July itself, we'll set a date then. Is everybody happy with that?
So that's all. But did we finish with our open door policy then?
Yes, we're trying this out with the Facebook and the group, to see how that goes, and then we'll review it in a credit meeting. Property management, to discuss the refurbishment of the red phone box on the bridge and to agree in actions which could include delegation to the property management committee. I think it needs painting,
The lights
doesn't
on, 'cause it's still got dark.
it? So who was it brought this?
Oh, sorry, dazzles. I can't remember who brought it up, but it does need doing. It's quite shabby. Paint on the outside. It's listed, a listed item. It's a particular kind of paint. I believe you can, pay an extortionate amount. There's also ways of I've seen quite a bit mentioned about this when I've had a quick look. So it's just to make people aware that if we're painting it, we do need a particular paint. It's called it's like K9 something. It's like it's the.
Of course, it needs repaired as well. Well, do we get the gentleman who did the rearing at Sandwich?
Ask him if he's doing it. I don't know if he did say he was thinking about retiring, but whether he has yet or not, and he might do a one-off job, even if he's not doing general painting.
Who's sticking on?
John Hodkinson. John Hodkinson. Hodkinson. He lives up in Rosecott doing West Mason. And he did a nice job on the cemetery ruins.
You did it. Would we have to get two of the quotes, or can we?
Depends on the cost.
Depends on the price.
Okay. Do you know him, or you have to approach him to?
But,
I just got an email, it's like, it's a 2-second job, so email to him.
Oh, don't worry.
I know, but this is, I've got his email address, it's just,
Okay.
you know.
So we've got a cost, and yes, I think ultimately this will then come to the property management once we start moving fully.
internally, the WI used to see it, but I don't know what to do
The
that.
WI just look after the inside, they make sure it's all tidy inside.
Does it need any repair works inside? I don't know what their sort of, what it looks like inside now, with the shelves and things there.
They were okay with that, I'll get the president to have a look and inform you.
Could we ask the property management group to arrange a survey? I don't think we need anything technical, but at least so we have an idea of what's involved.
Well, surely painting is,
Yeah, but
Is
you
there
need the outside painting, you need the outside and the inside painting, you need the shelves painting. There's
Well,
the
we do
floor,
want
and
to
the
have
concrete
it.
thing, so, you know.
But before you paint, surely you need to make sure it's renovated.
Exactly.
we-
Is there corrosion to get rid of?
Well, perhaps this,
So I think we
Mr.
need,
Mr. Hopkinson could come along as a one-off and just give us an idea of what needs to be done.
but is it listed, can we do that?
I think so, as long as you're using the proper,
I mean, belong to Park, all those listed belong to Parish Council.
as long as you're using the proper,
No, you listed means you have to do it in accordance with certain, you have to use, like say, you have to use the correct paint and things like that, so we have to make that perfectly clear that it's.
It's been a while since I had a look at it, but I think it needs a little bit more than just paint. I think it's.
So in that case-
pretty knackered at the bottom, to be honest.
Who do we need to get in?
You might need like an iron worker. I think it needs a bit of plating and stuff.
Yeah,
I think there's some fairly substantial corrosion,
okay.
but I can nip down and get some pictures if you like.
There are people up and down the country who are crazy about telephone boxes, and Felton's is not a very common model. So there might be resources of advice, or even teams of people who will do very expert jobs on renovating them because they love them. I'll see if I can find out something.
You have to take that on.
You can't remove it because the bridge thing is it's part of our mascot.
I don't think we want to anyway, it's all the gallery would have to change their Felton stuff with me as well.
I'll see what I can find out.
Thank you, Richard.
It's a K9, it's a bit.
It's a K, I thought it was a K6, isn't it? Alison's K6 telephone box,
Yeah, exactly.
K9. So Richard will take on some investigation to decide who we need to look at it.
And in the meantime, I'll ask John if he is still working, so that he's know whether he is or not.
To discuss the BT phone box and green actions. Woos.
Yes, you know, when BT were wanting to remove it, we said no. However, it's not in the best of condition, it's filthy, and you can't use cash in it, it has to be a card. The receiver's stuck together with black tape. So the question is, do we really want to retain it, or do we go back at this and look at it?
It was kept for the way that, because if you can't get a signal on, you have to one, you can ring, that's.
I think I agree totally. So, is it in the council's remit to ring BT and report that it needs repair work going to it? Is that, I mean, I'm happy to.
Surely for APT, they're very important to do something with it.
There's a justifiable reason for wanting to have it if it needs to
There
be.
is.
Yes,
Well, that's what we said, was they asked, because they had to consult us on the removal.
Okay.
I was thinking if it's going to be there, well, if it seems, to me anyway, that it should be maintained properly.
Oh, yes.
Can I ask, Mr. Chairman, that if it's only to be able to phone for 999 calls, could we have it situated next to the defibrillator?
meeting the ball over. I don't think they go to that expense. Just for, I think we could maybe get them to refurbish it. I mean, I can ask the question, but I very much doubt they're
So
going
I'm meeting very much for the job committee for it to go there.
Oh, yes. I'm not saying like it's a bigger company.
I think the question at the time was, it wasn't about recycling them, it was about removing them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they were saying they didn't have very much, they had records to show it wasn't being used, or not, or very low use. So that's another job for the council, then we'll make one phone call a week from there.
I will contact B2.
I'll have a look and see if I've got, when we put the objection in, who that came from, like, where that went, 'cause that didn't have it.
Okay, thank you. Recreation lane, allotment, plot access. Consider access matters in light of the copy licence. Does John have to leave? Does the others have to leave as well? Because it's not, because it's the allotment plot, it's not actually there. Yes. I hope so, but I just need to, yeah. I think he still has to leave, John has to leave, because it's casually a day, and people will feel free to speak.
But I don't think a member of the public would have to leave.
Sorry?
And I don't think a member of the public would have to leave.
No, we have to leave, just because we have to.
Or just stand out the door. Stand out the door.
No, that's fine, you can see
It's
that,
fine.
the idea is that we can speak freely now, without it in front of us.
And then you can listen to it later.
And then you can listen to it later.
I know, it's just what it is. In terms of the other ones, I think unless they, it's for them to decide because it's a code of conduct issue, so they have to decide if they think they've got a disposable pecuniary interest in the matter being discussed, then they should leave.
Right.
So,
I'll leave that up to the two judges.
Sorry.
John, you go and talk that way, it's one way system.
oh, total sharing.
Yeah, mate. Okay, right, come away.
Right.
I'll just read out a couple of things if I can. So, the way I see it, in 1975, Felton Park Estates handed over Wreck Lane to the Felton Parish Council, but on the understanding, sorry, 1975 was it?
Yes.
Yes. But on the understanding that anyone who had existing access kept those rights. Now, the allotment, which is still owned by Felton Park Estates, had those access rights. So does anyone disagree that the area known as the allotment on the north side has access rights down?
Chair.
Yes.
When that was transferred, they were allotments.
It is still an allotment.
Just a minute. And the allotments were for barrow access.
For what access?
Barrow,
Barrow.
barrow.
Or barrow access.
Barrow. So it was foot access. Now, I know things have moved on, but this is the problem. And I feel that the legal teams of Felton Park Estate have manipulated the terms on the deeds and on the land registry to such that it's a more open access.
Okay, thank you. I think we have moved on. Can I just ask a resolution then? Does, and I'll have to, I think I may have to exclude you two on this. Does everyone, well, the resolution is, does everyone agree that under the 1975 covenant, sorry?
There is no significant resolution on the agenda.
Well,
Well, let's do it.
can't I?
Should be on the agenda for the public to be aware of.
But just to agree a response to the access issue, the access matter.
Well,
Okay.
Well, you don't.
considering who was watching.
Right.
So if you're not hearing that exchange over this side of the hall.
I'm just, can I
The
add?
point of order I'm making is that I believe standing orders require, for anything significant or agenda, the detail that you're wanting to make the
Well, I think it is there. We want to consider the access rights.
decision.
So what I want to know, yes, I want to make a decision on this.
To read the response, to read the response, which is, the question is, does that plot have access to, consider the access matters relating to the allotment plot, and to agree the parish council's response?
So my first question is, which I will put to a vote, does everyone agree that the plot, known as the allotment, has access lines down Recreation Lane? All those in favour?
It has access, yes. But what kind of access? That is the critical thing.
No, if it has access rights, it has access rights.
Well,
Look you. Be careful what you say.
Vehicular,
So, can I have, sorry?
vehicular access rights.
It has vehicle access rights.
It didn't before.
I think that's, yeah.
That's what you need to be voting on.
Okay, yes. So does everyone agree that the area known as the allotment has vehicular access rights on Recreation Lane?
Yes.
All those in favour?
Can I just say, we don't have any, we haven't had legal advice on that, if it is or it isn't.
so I think what happens, I think the 1975 one says they felt the rights reserved for Felton Park Estate and vehicle access to their land, but it's still their land.
Yes.
But it wasn't vehicle access.
But it doesn't matter, they have
You see, the
reserved.
thing is, you've got to clarify vehicle access.
Is it classed as a highway? In that case, it is.
No, it's not.
vehicle access.
No, it's not.
If it's not classed as a highway, then is it vehicle access they've got down there?
No, it's
I
a
think-
public footpath.
Yeah, because I think that's what is going to sway it here. Because it's,
So I'm going to allow members of the public to speak.
As a councillor, I'm aware that the parish council did receive an email from the Home Solicitor saying that in relation to that land, that there was vehicular access to that land, known as the allotment. And I think that we received that after the initial contact with Mr. Croon, who's just left the room. There was access about, there was an issue about the licence, that was not valid. But in relation to the allotment land, I'm sure that there was an email saying from the solicitor that there was access to the allotment via vehicles.
That kind of is not right.
I think,
Yeah,
and I think
With
there is,
regards to the person that's left, my understanding of the issue was that there was a question as to whether he was the current licence holder and had a valid in-date licence. And that was the only query we had to whether he had access rights or not.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree because the 1975 deed accepted out of the trust, it conveyed the lane to the parish council, accepting for itself, retaining for itself a vehicle access for its own land. I haven't got a copy of the deed with me.
may I just say as well, there was a list, the document list that came out of the properties that did and didn't have access. Within that, there was a letter from the solicitor in December 2018, incorrectly saying that it didn't have access, and then they corrected themselves. So there was a letter, I think, in 2019 to clarify that they did have vehicle access to the allotment. So there was a list of properties sent out, and it's within that document list. But in terms of the licence, it was an issue until there was a valid licence produced. That was the issues preventing Mr. Green from
Yes.
accessing. But in terms of
In all the meetings I've attended, it's purely been on that licence agreement, and obviously it's for some of the new ones. It was just literally, does he have a valid licence? Okay? In that case, bearing in mind that email that Claire sent out this morning showing his licence agreement, does everybody agree that that email clearly shows who is the licence holder and that he is the valid licence holder until the end of March next year?
Well, based on that one, yes, but we never saw the one before.
That doesn't matter, we're on about now. So now, at the moment in time, he has a valid licence. Okay? So the question is, why, if he's got a valid licence, he's the licence holder, is he not allowed to use that land, or to have vehicle access rights to that land?
it's the type of access rights which is just been chosen is the critical point.
And the 75 agreement says vehicular access rights.
It doesn't, the 75 agreement does not say vehicular access rights.
Okay? We're going to have to put this on hold and put it back. And I'm going to check up on that. I'm quite annoyed about this because to me, the only issue, yes.
At the 1975 conveyance is extremely general about what sort of rights people have. It talks about easements and customary access. It doesn't mention any sort of vehicles, but they were talking about access onto a recreation lane, the original recreation lane, that was also had vehicle access on it.
So we said nobody has access rights at all. We're stopping everybody using recreation land. Why? Why are we stopping some?
We can give permission
Okay.
as landowner. That's our, like,
But I don't think we need to give permission in this case. I think he has permission. And I think we're putting ourselves in grave danger.
Point, Chair, this issue came up because Mr. Cruden was taking heavy equipment onto his own private land via the allotment over the pony. That was the issue, and this is how it all started.
That is not an issue. If he has access rights, it just says vehicle access rights. There's no issue to what he takes down there. The fact he's using the pony field is nothing to do with the council.
It does matter because you take access rights for an allotment.
Not onto.
Just for an allotment.
But where he goes from the allotment.
No, you can't anywhere else from this allotment.
No, he has permission from the landowner to pass over it, and surely he does.
He can go where he likes. From the allotment, he can go where he likes.
That's up to you. I disagree.
What is the pony field? Have they equipment?
but we don't know it.
We don't know that's for him to, it's nothing to do with the council. We don't know that is not the council's responsibility.
So we can only say he's got permission to go
To
to the allotment and
Yes.
further.
Yeah, and it's up to him to sort out all the rest. Yes.
Could we review the original documentation of the 75 agreement and bring it to the table so that it is listed as a matter of record?
I've got it as well. It's only 3 pages. I can circulate it.
And it doesn't say pedestrian only, it just says access.
It was to protect the rights of people who had access at the time.
Because it was a Burgess plot, wasn't it?
Probably.
Originally, it would have been a farm track.
Yeah, it was the way the villagers got out to the hayfields. Originally.
Like I said, we've had 2 clarifications. There's a December letter of 2019 to say that it did have vehicular access. It maintained the rights that it had, and then we've had subsequent, after this agreement and the licence, we had clarification from the solicitor to say, yes, he had access, and that would potentially allow him to access across the land to the pony field and into his land, if he had permission from the pony field owners.
But that has nothing to do with the council.
No, it hasn't, but we have got that clarification in the in emails that he has vehicular access to that land, and whatever happens after that, it's not our responsibility.
Did you say you found something?
I've got the deed, I'm just waiting to download it.
Okay, Richard, while we're
As I understand it, John has done what the council asked.
Yes.
And therefore, I think it would be inappropriate to start going back and reviewing earlier arguments. If he's done what we wanted him to do, then I
that's
think
my argument.
you should go forward to a vote.
That's my argument. The resolution, I was just trying to set the ground So that, because the resolution is that the chairman will contact the current licence holder and inform him that he has access rights on a recreation lane for the duration of the current licence, but his rights will cease on the current expiry date unless he produces another valid licence agreement. So he has access rights, whether that's vehicular, footway, he has access rights to...
Okay, so there's two parts of it, indeed. The first part says, it's the bit that Rich is referring to, which is very vague, about the easements, quasi-easements, basically continuing, that they are protected. So any easements existing at the time are protected by that 1975 deed. Then it goes on in the next clause, so it's clause 4.
Yes.
There is accepted out of the conveyance for the benefit of Felton Park Estate or any part thereof, their owners and occupiers.
Yeah.
John is an occupier for the
Yeah.
part, for the time being, of part of Felton Park Estate. A full right from time to time and at all times by day or night to pass and repass with or without vehicles or animals over and along the land described, subject to the person exercising such right paying a due proportion of the cost of repair according to the use of the surface.
Okay.
So it's a separate right from the one that the other property would be looking at, because this is still owned by Felton Park Estates.
But, Chair, on that one, on his licence, he's not allowed any animals.
No, that's on his on the allotment land.
No, on his...
Can I just stop you there? We have no right to... His licence is not... It's not...
What I'm seeing in the agreement there with Claire's read out, it says here the right with animals, etc., etc.
And vehicles.
With or without vehicles or animals. It's an and or, it doesn't have to be with animals.
But the point is, what I'm saying is, his license says he's not allowed animals.
But because they can limit that right. That right is saying, we want our occupiers to have this right. They can then limit it in a subsequent deed to him, like to say we can't have animals.
So, I think that clearly shows that he does have the right to vehicle access. So my resolution is the chairman will contact the current leaseholder and inform him that he has the vehicle access rights along recreation lane for the duration of the current lease, but his rights will cease on the current expiry date unless he produces another valid licence agreement. All those 4. All those against? And all those abstaining? Okay, so I think that was passed overall then. One off, thank goodness. I'll just go get it in.
Great minds think alike.
There's separate ones.
You two are you off to? Get a chance.
Does that go out? I'm contacting the current licence holder. You have vehicle access rights until the expiry of your current lease, and then you must show us another valid licence after that to continue those access rights.
Can I ask any questions?
Ooh. See you later.
Put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah. See you later, and I'll ask you to. So at the moment you have access rights until the expiry of your valid licence. That's the first question that you had.
Right. Chairman,
Yes.
just for pure clarification, did any reference to this identify those allotments as the north side allotments?
Felton Park Estate allotment.
Felton Park Estate.
Either way,
Yes, on the north side.
because
That's what I said initially, so yes.
yes, I should just make sure that all references are, because the south side do have an access.
Okay, item 9, traffic and parking matters. Discuss delivery vehicles drive onto the pavement outside Public Vale and give reactions to discuss A1 closure, consequent traffic issues. Just at the end of the last meeting, you asked me if I would write to Katie, who's the PC, and see if she could do anything about the vehicles driving through. And indeed on parking, she can't do anything about the vehicles driving through. That's a highways issue, as is the parking actually on the pavement, that is highways. It's not actually a PC council issue, it's highways. They will respond to any instance from those vehicles driving through the village, the police, but they won't actually do anything about it. So it's for us to contact highways and say, before you start joining anyone, look at your plans, because Felton village is not suitable to accept that number of vehicles coming through at any time. With regards to people parking on the pavement, Katie says is more than happy to make keeper inquiries and speak to any drivers who are identified as causing the obstruction. So if somebody just take a photograph of the vehicle clearly blocking the access rights, she will then go and make inquiries as to who the keeper of that vehicle is, and then she will go and talk to them about the obstruction they're causing. For information, I spoke to the surgery people because the cars are regularly parked quite close together there. I spoke to them last week or the week before, and certainly when I've walked down there for the last couple of weeks, there's been a large gap there between those vehicles. They've taken on board what I've said to them about making all we can do is approach the council. And they say, I'm spoke to the highway, sorry, no approach highways. I'm spoke to Claire on another matter similar. It's actually in the benefit of the residents themselves to ride, because if you report it to ourselves, all we do is pass it on to highways. It will send one email, and that will be it. We'll forget about it because it goes to the bottom of our list. And we said we're already very busy with a lot of other things. If that member of public writes, and they write every week, we're more likely to get something done about it. There was a light out on the lane, Victoria Terrace, which the resident there complained about on a weekly basis and got it replaced. The council has spent.
I sent a couple of emails and just got generic responses because the resident was on the phone to them regularly. You know, we got them working out. So
I know you had a complaint about this, John. So if you want to write to the highways on their behalf, but you know, you might be better going to the person that complained and said, I'm happy to do that for you, but if you do it yourself, you're more likely to get something done. I think we just need to be aware of what limits we have as a PC.
We can put a complaint in as well, but all I'm doing is the same reporting system really, and you know, even if I go direct to a person, it still sort of gets bounced in their system. And
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
can I ask that the A1 closures, etc., can the highways write to us beforehand to say what their plans are for closure of the village, and then we can respond straight away and get things organised from there.
Yeah. That's good. Have you got some
yeah,
I'm happy to write that one again.
Chair, on that issue, we got a letter about 2 months ago about this. And I phoned up straight away about it, because resident of Main Street. And I had to involve the MP to get a response. They said they wouldn't reply to me in it would take 15 working days to come back to me. And by then, the job would start. And I got so irate.
but not only that, we've got different answers. Because Tony rang and got told one thing, and I rang and got passed to another department, and another department, and eventually to what Tony had spoken to, who told me something different, didn't they? I think we didn't get the same.
Didn't get the same response.
Didn't get the same response.
So, as I said, when I eventually wrote to the MP, a gentleman from Highway came to see, phoned me, and I had a long talk with him, and indicated there would be no more closures of the A1 or any Felton, any vehicles diverting from that. I said, until the next time you realise you need some, oh, I don't think I will be. I said, how certain can you be? And he couldn't answer.
So all we can do is just keep on to highways. So Richard.
I wrote to Highways as well and copied it to Claire, and I didn't get any response.
No.
Not even, we're not going to say anything.
Yeah,
I spoke, as I said, the bloke I spoke to was high up in the job that's been going on at Tesco Roundup on the E19. When that's finished, he's going for the jury of the year one. That'll be his next project.
Okay.
well, I think there, that's a
But
gentleman.
I can tell you now, there's encountered delays already. Because they encountered mine workings as they go around the back of Bushy Park.
Okay, that's thank you for that.
I was just going to say, could we actually utilise Ben Sanderson, because he actually does something about this and gets straight onto highways. I know that Thurston Parish Council and who's over that side is completely different to us, but it affects them in the same way it affects us, and when there's a highways issue, he just seems to sort it out like that. Trevor Thorne obviously doesn't live in Felton and doesn't really care, so that is another option. And I'm happy to email him if we can have a conducive what we actually want to happen.
Well, I think what we want is advance notice of any closures they know about. Obviously, if things happen at your notice, there's nothing to do. We'd like advance notice of any closures, and we'd like consultation on what they plan to do around when they start the dueling with the other one. Because the village can't
I think we also need a clear consensus as to what they want people that park on Main Street to do during these situations. We've had absolute chaos the past couple of times where half of the residents seem to park on the pavement, the rest of the residents seem to leave their cars on the road. I don't have an option because I have steps outside my house and I can't park on the pavement, so my car gets left out in the middle of the road whilst everyone else moves. So I think they need to say what exactly they want us to do in these situations and make sure that it's safely coordinated.
Yeah.
Would that be a great
Going back to the police, can we ask them to organise their plans correctly so that if there is a closure of the bridge, if there's an accident and they say they have to go through the village, that they are told that the village really isn't suitable, because depending on where the accident is, it can go through Guy's Hands and come out the same area and continue on the A1.
As I said, the police will only respond to an incident, so...
But they did actually have a plan as to what they would do, and where the lorries would stack up on the A1 and not come through the village. And I think they need to get organised with that plan again.
So it is about the more you haven't responded, because what I was reading is when there's been an incident on the A1, the police are called out on what they're doing.
Yes.
As a result, so it's not about.
I'll get back on to Katie for that one then.
Because they did say they would lorry stack, so they wouldn't bring, they would only divert small vehicles through.
So we would details of their contingency plan, was that right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about parking on the pavement, but the thing is, Chair, a number of years ago there was a serious accident on the bypass, and traffic was coming through the village, and there was absolute gridlock in the village. And the chief constable then lived in Bamburgh, and he heard what was going on his radio as he came down. And he came into the village and he walked around the village and knocked on doors and said, "Can't you put your car on the pavement?" And we said, "We're not allowed to." "Oh yes, you can." And we said, "Will you give us permission to go on the pavement?" "Yes, permanently." And he withdrew.
Well, thank you for that.
But the police, they do anything to alleviate the situation.
But not permanently. So that's what we'll hopefully get some guidance on, and some clarification on that. So you're happy to write to Glenn on that? Thank you very much for that. That is everything we need to go on. New surgery to discuss the letter sent to residents by Felton Surgery and agree any actions. And I think you just need to be careful, it's a letter sent to all patients, not residents, or patients of Felton surgery.
Sorry,
Yes.
The reason why I asked for anything that is people who can't get double written prescriptions, appointments is happening there. There's a lot of people trying to go down there. You can't get an appointment, you can't get them to answer the phone, or it takes them a long time. So I wonder what everybody's going to do for our prescriptions. You know, if you're at work, you've got limited time when you go and pick them up. And if you can't get there, I mean, that's a big issue for the village, prescriptions and appointments. It is now.
I agree.
So you've got to really,
And is it something the parish council can do?
I don't know, we'll have to get there.
Well, Chair,
I think one of the things we possibly could do is we could look at providing something towards transportation. I think that's
Thing is, it's, see, you've got people in the morning school, and then at night, how many want to work that one out? The transport, it'll cost quite a bit of money.
But is there, I mean, there's a couple of different things there. For the appointments, I think I've got some communication from like a sort of charitable group that do patient transport for appointments and things, so I just need to see what they're offering and whether it's something that would help, whether they would help in this situation. Because it was a sort of a cold call. It was actually about something else, and I mentioned this exact problem to her, and she said, "Oh, I'll put you in touch with a different person who deals with it." So I will dig out that information, which only came in the last couple of weeks, and send it round. So that on terms of the prescriptions, I know during COVID, not necessarily our village, but there were lots of places that did volunteer pickups for prescriptions for people because they couldn't get to things. Is that something that we could support, the parish council could support setting up in our village, if that's going to be a long problem that we could have? There were a lot of people who wanted to respond to the COVID crisis and volunteer their time. But presumably those people still want to help their fellow residents, and maybe there could be brought together to provide them. I don't know what the legal, what kind of legal hoops there are to jump through when you're picking up prescriptions. Presumably there are some. But you know, maybe that is something that could be explored because it has been done recently for COVID, hasn't it?
Well, I certainly know that when the first lockdown was going on, the village set up a community helpline and there was people manning the phone and they would go and collect prescriptions for the people. So it is possible, but you just need the name and you can bring them up. So maybe we can approach the people that did that. So,
and I just say that perhaps you can ask the doctors to, if you need the prescription, to send out the prescription to you in the post, and you can organise somebody. I mean, you could even get the bus yourself to go to Annick, to whichever chemist is open to get your own prescription.
that's when you're given a prescription, that would be for you to discuss with the doctor whether you can do that.
That's what I'm saying.
The issue is going to be, because at the moment you can still put prescriptions here, but come
What I'm saying, they can write a prescription and send it to you at your home, and you can go to a chemist.
so they can do that.
Yes.
So that just gives the patient, so we just need to make the patient understand that that is an option to them.
The patient participation group talks to the surgery about publicising that.
I think that's a good way forward.
As an example, to understand the attitude of the doctors, my wife emailed them with this. I have read your information about Felton surgery. If the services have to move to Widrington prior to the completion of the new surgery, bearing in mind the round trip of approximately 17 miles, I would like to be able to request two or more months medications at a time. Answer. Thank you for your email. Should there be a requirement for any temporary movement of services, we will contact all patients and provide further information on accessing those services that may be affected. Useless.
Yeah, I've had comments from patients already why they're going to go to Witherington when it's a double bus route, when they might as well just change surgeries and go on one bus route to North Anna. And it is this thing as well about prescriptions, because at one time we used to get 2 or 3 months prescriptions at a time. Since this practice have taken over, that's been reduced to a month supply. And I think the question is as well as being asked, is well, why can't we have like a 3-month prescription again?
This is an excellent opportunity for the village to have its say. When they have to send, before they can go ahead with any emergency, before they can go ahead with any closure, they have to complete the patient participation survey.
Yes.
So we need to make sure that all members of the village fill that in and make their feelings strongly felt, because that will get a weighting at the meeting. There's not a lot I think
Do
we
you
need
want
to
me
do.
to notice on the notice board to say, if you have any concerns about the move, please complete the patient survey?
I think so,
Something
yeah.
like that, and I can even put a copy of it, because then it can ask, can't I?
Yeah. And that's because it's, I'm not sure what we can do as a council ourselves, apart from trying to publicise this and get people to be aware that fill this in is in your interest and you're feeling strongly felt.
It's not the best of the road anyway, if you live now. You don't go down the road.
No.
I did ask the same question at the PPG meeting, and I got no response.
About the 3 months in.
That was last draft, no?
No, sorry, about the medication thing. Oh, no,
About
about the budget.
patient or maybe talk about walking with the feet.
You could put a note on Felton first and really do that as well.
Yes.
It'll probably get more attention on the notice board. Just to encourage people either to participate in the Zoom feedback or to write.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, you can get prescriptions by post.
Okay.
I know a lot of my colleagues obviously work there, and you know, everything from HIV to medication to diabetic medication, they get their prescriptions by post.
It's just making sure the patients ask for this, if they need to be aware of what they can ask for and not just to accept blindly. Yeah.
But when you...
I think on the back of what Anne's just said too, people are saying, well, and once I do that, I can't see any reason why going back when the surgery is relocated here. And we know the dispensary is a big thing for them.
Yeah. Why they go back to collecting it?
Why do we go back?
When they can get it if they're shopping in Alec, basically.
Yeah, I'll get it delivered to the door.
This is why I'm saying you can actually ask for a prescription and go get your own.
Will people get it delivered? They'll get it delivered for you?
Who will?
The doctors?
Will they?
Yes.
I thought it went through
If you ask the doctors, the key pharmacy from Sherwood come down and pick up and deliver.
Well, could the PPG group force the doctors to publicise those alternative methods? Like, put them into...
that's what I've written down.
Yeah. So ask them, how can we get all raising prescriptions and get them to put something out to patients, because they do it to their whole patients, can't they?
Can you also ask, make it clear that we do have patients that struggle to get the 2 bus journeys? So is there any way that those, if say a patient had to give blood, they could just go to Alec to give blood rather than...
Try again.
Yeah,
Story.
that's all we can ask.
Yeah.
I think what's really important is we make sure it's in the practice's best interest to make sure they put an intermediate plan in place. Because otherwise they are going to lose patients to those, like we said, more quadratic, and will go, which is going to completely defeat the meaning of us maintaining a surgery in the village. And I think that's what we've got to make sure is really put across to them strongly, that people will go elsewhere and stay elsewhere if we don't have that interim plan in place.
I think they've already been affected.
They will have been.
So
I mean, it is concerning because even as a PPG group vendor, we are not getting the answers back.
Yeah.
But don't you think it's happening in surgeries throughout the whole of the country? Because if you keep the people from Amble, well, we get more vaccinations at the minute. people who are customers at Armdale sometimes try and get an appointment for a fortnight.
Okay,
And
I'm
they don't
conscious,
know it's an appointment when you go and stand outside the door in pouring rain.
thank you for that, I'm conscious that time's running on, we're getting close to about 2 hours and we're in here finished. I don't think there's a lot we can do as in the PC apart from ask for those members on the patient participation group to make things done, and we'll also try and publicise some website
They
listing
can all put it on
and
the Felton book,
yes. Just to try and get them to the patients themselves, make sure they feel this and get representation.
Do we have an outstanding request to the doctors for a meeting?
What we did.
If I just wanted to review petition and response to see if the develop screening actions, we were supposed to meet the developer on Thursday this week, but
We sent that email in.
we sent that email, it was too short notice because we couldn't get the agenda item out in time, so we didn't meet with them. So we sent that email out stressing our position, what our
The doctors?
yes, but that would come with, I thought it was the sure and the doctors, I thought that was the
Anyway.
also.
Yeah, so we haven't had a response, so we can defer 10B until we have.
Yes, so 10B, we haven't had a response yet, so until we get a response, this happened further.
2 days after the letter was sent, or the email, Claire circulated the minutes of a private meeting of the Northumberland Primary Care Commissioning Committee.
Yes.
And I highlighted on page 2, Janet Guy, who's the chair of the Clinical Commissioning Committee, highlighted that there was an assumption that no rent would be payable to the parish council for the land being provided for the new build.
You're aware of that?
And that's repeated
Yes.
several times, and also says that that was agreed 3 years ago.
No, it wasn't.
Can we just be,
No.
Well, they obviously think it
Can
was.
we just, just be careful about what we're saying at the moment, because this is not a closed session, so we need to be wary of commercial sensitivity.
I don't think that's commercial sense.
Yes, it is.
I think if we just,
That document's in the public domain.
that
yeah,
is our response.
It's, yeah.
but be careful with our response, don't go into that. So we're aware of what they said, we're aware of that document. Certainly the other councillor, you were sent that because you've come in late as a councillor, you're just been elected, so this is captured for the purpose of those. But no, it wasn't agreed by the council beforehand. So where they got that information was agreed, we don't know.
Okay.
Had we been stakeholders from the beginning, we might have been so. So yes, we'll have to delay. So on to item 11, standard item report from Councillor Thorne. Are we going to be disappointed yet again?
We are going to be disappointed, I'm sorry.
So we did write to him to express our dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
But it won't surprise many here that we didn't get to a response.
No response.
Someone, Mr Chairman, perhaps someone can go down to the Northumberland Downs and get them to,
Well, do you want me to forward my email on to you and you can
Yes.
send a
Yes.
follow-up?
As a way of pressurising, would you like me to forward the email that I sent him, I'll send to him as well?
Yes,
to see if
please.
we get any response from either of them.
Yes, thank you. Because it might be embarrassing if somebody else is doing work and you can't.
It won't, I promise you. I've tried that.
Yeah.
Standard item update from the Northumberland Police. I did forward this on to everybody, but I'll just read out something else. From the police, there have been 2 crimes reported in the Felton area between the 1st of May and the 31st of May. Unfortunately, they cannot disclose any information in relation to these crimes. But there have been no incidents reported which was very concerns to the residents, so they're not unduly worried about what those crimes are. The antisocial neighbourhood officers will continue to monitor the play area and the field for antisocial behaviour. And they are still saying they are currently planning on attending the villages with a community engagement plan, and they'll be in touch once the dates can be confirmed. They still haven't actually given the dates out yet. So hopefully, as soon as we get that information, we'll make that public, and that, yes, can go on the Felton Thursday matter as well. Once we get that date, let people know the engagement plan really is.
Well, I did that last time and I didn't show up. They drove past a few times and didn't bother to stop, so.
Okay, item 13.
Chair, on that issue report, can you request some further details on those two complaints? It's villagers are entitled to know what's going on in their own village.
I think maybe there's investigations going on, but I'll try and ask if we can give anything.
Well, but some nature of what's going on.
I can ask.
Yes,
But at the moment, all I can do is tell you what they
I know, but if you push them.
I've never got the details out of it.
We'll ask. Just say that. Item 13, parish representation attending meetings. To answer the question from the public, we did not have a meeting with any developers or doctors prior to or in between the emergency meeting we had. Has anybody else, any other councillors attended any meetings, any NAP meetings, etc. Since the last meeting? No. Item 14, ongoing matters.
Yeah, I'm busy with Greg and I have just made some going to make some changes to the allotment. There isn't much to report because my time's mostly been involved with wrestling with the accounts, as Greg's aware, internal audit stuff. Just a few things that are of concern to me. And I did mention the first one to Trevor when I emailed him. The area at the top end is grass isn't growing lovely behind that little patch of fencing. Unfortunately, the new unofficial lay-by 2 feet down the road is eroding quickly. So all it's achieved is shifting it down the road, and that's not really very satisfactory. So I haven't brought it to Trevor's attention. I think it's something that we need to maybe, a bit like we're doing with the other working groups, the South Video, the Labour, etc. It's like the one that we need a working group to come up with a solution to put to county council. Because we obviously need a more permanent solution, because as soon as that fencing comes down.
Chair, on this issue, for many years we used to arrange, I know it's been difficult to approve it, and have a village walk with it, one of the county council officers. Used to be a chap called Bill Pringle. And you could walk around the village, you could point different things to him, and you would take them on board and say to them, far quicker than your talk right here. And I think it's something, as things are starting to ease now.
Is that with the county council?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
I've got his details.
Yeah. I'll try and arrange that. Thank you very much.
Start doing it.
Yeah.
So that is a bit of a concern. Still awaiting quite a lot of things from County Council. Still awaiting confirmation about the Verge Riverside, what they're going to do about our parking suggestions. If you remember, we had asked them to not put the lane lines in front of the Fox and to confirm we're going to do some maintenance. So I'm still waiting. There's a few bin matters, the bins and things I think I'm going to pass to the property management committee as soon as that's up and running. On that point, I think if we do have a meeting to approve the accounts, and we'll do terms of reference for that committee, that would be really helpful. I haven't had an update on the Davis Avenue property, but I haven't walked past it. It looks like there's still not there.
Very negative, no?
Yeah.
It's taken a long time.
It seems to be a really stop-start from what the impression I get, so it's just I'll ask Jason what's happening with it. The notice board for the Cocoa Park. Bellway were going to install a new notice board. It arrived, broken leg, they've sent it back, they're waiting the replacement. The lady's gone on maternity leave. I've asked for an update from her for temporary cover. So as soon as the board arrives, they're going to install it. It's just that they've had issues. I think everything else is just to move forward.
Can you go from that one as well? That's the one on the agenda item.
That's my correspondence, that's my next item.
Oh, sorry.
I'll just watch the time. So I think everything else, what I'm going to do, we're just going to put in some, change the format slightly so it's easier to see where there's been changes and also tie it into actions. So I'll try and put resolutions on here to say what we decided, when it was decided who was going to do it, so that it's more of an action list rather than an update, if that makes sense.
With dates on.
Yeah. So look out for that. I'll be working on that in the next week or so and get that sorted out.
Very quickly, if we get to the correspondence received, please.
Can we just accept the meeting?
Oh, yes, good past. I estimate we'll probably need 10 15 minutes. Past resolution, so we have to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, we'll extend for 15 minutes.
So yeah, correspondence list, as it says really. Just in particular, I've had a couple of requests in, you'll notice, the bridge singers have requested to use the all-weather court and I've had a subsequent one in from the village band group. Now, at the moment, we don't take any bookings for the all-weather court, so I've sort of said, well, you know, you can't book it, but equally, you know, we're not going to turn you off if you turn up just because you're not doing the sport, it's a recreational space, I guess.
There is one regular, there used to be a regular
football group on a Wednesday night, but they're not, again, it's not booked, so they, you know, if they turned up and someone else was using it, we don't have a booking system as such.
I'm just saying there is that one regular.
So again, anything like that, I think I'll just, you know, continue to respond, because I know places that people are groups are looking for venues, basically. And the other one we've had a couple in from is about sales on the bridge, so we have the fan sale, and again, we've had like one of the art groups that asked if they could do a sale on the bridge. Again, I think those just go to county council to be honest. So as long as they get the approvals that they need from county council, then it, you know, I thank them for notifying us. But again, I guess it's not for us to decide.
The second one down, email from Symptoms.
Yeah, that came around quite a while ago, so maybe needs to come back around.
So we need to make sure that goes on the agenda again, because
Yeah.
that's seems to have nothing's happened to that.
Yeah.
I can see. Anybody any other issues on the correspondence received? Item 16, items for next agenda.
Chair, before you go to the next item, the gentleman I spoke to, I've just put a check. Was not from highways, he was from costing engineering, who were the main contractors for the Carrick Brewery, with the A1 for water.
Okay.
So that's on the A1 road.
Just for Claire's record.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, as regards to the cleaning of the village, I know Barbara sent an email around to say that it was worthless because of cars, carpet, etc. We used to get from County Council a list of the dates when we are due a clean-up of the village. So please could ask when it is and publish it for us.
That's yeah.
Yeah, like the drain, the gully,
Yeah.
the gutters and everything, yeah.
All we can do then is put a letter through people's doors or put a notice on the website again.
Yeah.
Well, I encourage people to move their
The
cars.
street was in the village last week.
Yes,
Yeah.
but if people don't move the cars,
But they don't, yeah, well I asked them, I think last time this happened, we asked them if there was a schedule and they sort of said, the reason they gave why they couldn't give precise dates was because it's a rolling programme. So they've got a list of places, if one takes a long time, knocks everything back, if one takes a short time, knocks everything forwards. He said the best they could probably do was let me know the days in advance, which I said was better than nothing, so I'll just take that up again and ask them.
There's, at our end, Main Street, that is near the Running Fox, most of it, a lot of the cars parked for visitors, and they're not going to be particularly bothered about looking on websites when the street sweepers come along. So it's, you know, it's a bit, we also get a lot of sweep papers and crisp packets.
I think everything just blows along the street as well. It's quite bad, like quite
I
bad.
mean, it's the same everywhere in the village. You get cars pulling up, people get out, put their walking shoes on, and you go away.
That's
You
it.
can't do anything about it.
all right, so we have items for next agenda, please. Yes.
In light of the Queen's Jubilee coming up, how about a commemoration oak planted.
Sorry, is it again?
Commemoration of
An oak tree.
for the Queen's Jubilee.
Yes, and what was it?
An oak
Oh, no.
We did that for the last one and it ended up in the biggest garden, whether it's still there in the neighbourhood there.
So we have that. Any other items for the agenda at the moment? We've got the...
It's on the back of Hampton. Is it worth contacting, I don't know what the proper name is, the nature group? And ask them to identify
Fire
around
nature.
the village, anywhere that can take trees. Because would it not be an opportunity to, for further planting?
There is an environmental working group within the...
Look, Barbara didn't say that.
I know, I'm saying.
She said the nature group.
Thank you.
Yes, a totally different group from this.
Yeah.
But obviously they are involved with various activities. So would it be worth asking them?
What date's the Jubilee?
I can't remember. But this is tree belief.
To identify where.
Is the next Jubilee next year?
Yes,
And then running
Yes.
the bank holidays together, so it's the late bank holiday next year, so you've got a year's time.
Yes.
it's the 4 day weekend,
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So it's the second of, it's around the 2nd of June, isn't it?
No, I think it's,
But it's not late, because I'm moving the late May bank holiday to the Friday. Also, I don't know, I can't remember.
Any other items at the moment?
I'm just thinking, would they be more aware of when
Well,
trees.
Rich and I, Anne, and the group have sorted out about our terms of reference for our sustainability environmental group, and we were going to contact the Felton Nature, like Action for Nature, so we'd be happy to discuss that with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seemed an opportunity, not to miss.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
And would involve the village again. Yeah.
Well, the next meeting we're going to slip around with my apologies now. I'm on my how to chair and meet all the responsibilities of chair course. So
I'll put it at 7 o'clock, but it's 7:15, because that's the new time now.
what we're going to next meeting. I think it's on that next meeting. I will be here. So you'll be chairing that in the week. So there's no other items for at the moment. Don't forget to have an email into the if anything does come up. So next meeting is the 5th of July, 7:15, 7 PM. It says there. I've said my apologies already. I declare the meeting closed at 21:23. Thank you very much.